Is this on and working? Can you hear me? Great. I'd like to call to order the meeting Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority on Wednesday, September the 12th, 2018. I am going to start the meeting by announcing that Director Smith is not physically here, but is calling in and should be on the line. Director Smith, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Terrific. As we've done in the past, we'll have any item as we go through it. I'll call on you first, so you'll have an opportunity to make your comments. And of course, if you have any additional thoughts after discussion, you're welcome to pipe in again, but that way we hopefully won't forget about you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'll start with a roll call, please.
Yes, Chair Corrigan.
Here.
Director Smith. Present, Director Smith.
Yeah, here.
Thank you. Alternate Director Inda.
I'm here.
Alternate Director Yulo. Director Miller.
Here.
Director Sinks.
Here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Director Gibbons.
Here.
Director Bruins.
Here.
Director Craig. Here. Thank you. I will note that Director Cortese, Director Harney, and Vice Chair Abikoga are absent.
Thank you very much. Now is the point in the meeting where we take public comment items that are not on the agenda tonight. If there's anyone here from the public wishing to address the JPA board, you may make your way to the podium. I think we have speaker cards somewhere handy. Seeing no one making their way up here, I'm going to move on. Before we move to the consent calendar, I do want to announce that I'm going to shift 2 items on the regular regular agenda. Thank you. We're going to switch items 3 and 4. Are there any other changes to the agenda anyone would like to suggest? Okay, great. Then let's proceed with the consent calendar, and all votes tonight will be roll call votes since we have a member absent. Okay?
I would just point out, there was an item, I think, that was on consent, and I discovered, and I think we have a desk item that just corrects the rate schedule for PEA, right?
Yes, there is.
There were 2 different tables with different values.
Yes, there's a red line at your desk which makes the correction.
That should be the second document in your packets in front of you this evening.
Thank you. Because I had an exchange with Girish earlier and said, which is it? And so it's one versus the other, so thank you.
With that correction, I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
I have, is this on?
Yes.
Okay. I have one comment on, it's a minor thing, but in 1H, in terms of the contract with Mail RS, I think staff made an effort to replace contractor with consultant. There are still some references to contract in there.
Okay, we will.
Any other items to have pulled? We have a motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Second.
I think we need a roll call vote. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to start with Chair Corrigan.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Alternate Director Inda.
Yes.
Alternate Director Yulo.
Yes.
Director Miller.
Yes.
Director Sinks.
Yes.
Director Rennie.
Yes.
Director Gibbons.
Yes.
Director Bruins.
Yes.
Director Craig.
Yes.
Vice Chair Abikoga. Yes. Thank you. The motion carries.
Perfect timing. We have, sorry, I'm having a writing utensil malfunction. That's a joke, actually, because Girish has to always loan me a pen. I may be in desperate need again, despite having brought one tonight. All right, on to the regular calendar. We're going to start with the CEO report. Thank you, I have a pen. We're going to start with the CEO report. I'd like to turn the mic over to our CEO, Girish Balachandran.
Thank you, Chair Corrigan, members of the board. On the CEO report, I would like to introduce a few new staff that we have. In the audience today, we have Poonam Agarwal, who is our Senior Regulatory Analyst. Welcome. And she comes to us with her last job being with the CPUC. So welcome, Poonam. To her left, to your right, we have Karen Pauls, who is going to be with us for several months. She is helping us with some process mapping and process improvements in various areas of our organization. So she also has worked in some past lives for Arco Solar, and her background is in engineering and material science, but she's decided to do this for us for a few months. We I'd also like to introduce on that end Colleen McCamey. She is our newest climate fellow, and you did welcome, and we worked with 2 climate fellows last year, and their term was ended, and we now have a new climate fellow. Welcome. I would also like to update you on the RFOs for renewable power. We will most likely, we're in the last stages of negotiating these contracts with 2 suppliers for solar and storage. Andrea will be reaching out to you to get times on your calendar for a meeting, special meeting between October 22nd and 31st to hear that item. So she'll be reaching out to you in the next day or 2 to see if we can arrange a special meeting where you can hear both those contracts. I would now like to turn the mic over to Hillary Staber, our Manager of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs, to give you an update on the legislative session.
Good evening, directors. Let's see, there we go. Well, despite the fact that we've taken a break in August, I feel like I actually may have less to relay than usual because we've had so many urgent updates that you have heard most of the major news items already. But I'm going to do a very quick overview here, brief also because there's going to be a lot of follow-up coming shortly this fall, where there'll be lots more opportunity to discuss these topics in detail and prepare for the next session. So very briefly, updates on the big 3 regulatory proceedings. As you know, the PCIA vote has been pushed back from the 13th to the 27th of September. So a huge thank you to all of you who have helped with letters and outreach on that. We have also been meeting with staff in ex parte meetings, and we're going to continue that push through the 27th. On the resource adequacy proceeding, which really centers around how CCAs impact reliability planning in California, that proceeding has been essentially suspended since our last board meeting. The commission realized that it had more or less spiraled out of scope. There were a lot of issues that they hadn't initially planned on, and so they are developing a new schedule. We're expecting a lot of action on that upcoming this fall. And similarly for the integrated resource planning proceeding, that's been quiet since we submitted ours on August 1st, along with the other load-serving entities around the state. But the commission has been reviewing those, and we are already beginning to hear sort of the rumblings of the next phase of that proceeding. So that is that's the main proceedings on the regulatory side, and you will continue to get updates, especially on the PCIA, as they appear. So very quickly, an overview of where we came out on the 2018 legislative session. First of all, thank you so much. You have all gone above and beyond, and I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that all of you helped us so much with advocacy, because your voices are the ones that really matter in a lot of these debates. So thank you for all of your outreach. As you know, we are at the end of the legislative session. We are now in the veto period, which means that something can happen any moment between now and midnight on September 30th, especially given that all of the bills that Governor Brown prioritized for signing before his climate summit this week have now been dealt with, so everything else is kind of anytime he wishes. So here's a quick overview of the main bills that we worked on. Did they pass? And the color coding is based on how we were approaching them. So running through the list, AB 893, that was kind of a reincarnation of a bill that we fought last year. It was kind of a grab bag of procurement mandates from a number of different stakeholders that was successfully kept from the last floor vote. AB 3232 and SB 1477 down at the bottom were bills that we were more peripherally involved in. They had a strong coalition of support from the building decarbonization stakeholder groups, but those are both bills that put additional resources towards decarbonization in the building and space heating sectors. And those we did express our support for, in addition to the coalition that was pushing them. They both got through. SB 100, you've all heard, that became the big headline bill for the climate summit. I think the most interesting thing to say about that going forward is that we are very much expecting follow-up legislation, because that bill sets a lot of very aggressive and admirable goals, but there are some very key details left unspecified about, for example, what exactly constitutes carbon-free energy. So between now and 2045, you can look forward to further debate on that. SB 901, I'm skipping around here. SB 901 was a bill that was important to a lot of stakeholders for reasons other than the ones that we were involved in, but we did eventually arrive at a place with that thanks to work from a number of different stakeholders, where the rights of CCAs to foster distributed energy resources, microgrids, and other grid edge technologies that are involved in grid resiliency and hardening were not infringed upon. And that was due to a lot of work from the part of CalCCA, their lobbyist stakeholders through the whole session. So that ended well. And then finally, SB 237, we are in fact still pushing for a veto on that. It did pass the legislature, but I would note on that. So some things to take away from this session. We did a ton of outreach, and I think that particularly on SB 237, where our efforts were concentrated, while it is true that it made it through the legislature, if we look at the voting records, for our legislators, 5 of our 6 assembly members and 4 of our 5 senators voted it down in the Assembly and the House, respectively. Senator Hill is our only representative on the Senate Energy Committee. He voted it down twice that day, so we are working on a thank you letter for him because he really came through this session. So we have made a lot of progress working with our legislators, and so for the next session, we are going to continue working on not only that, but how we can also help with broader coalition building across the state, leveraging the relationships that we have with key stakeholders. So finally, this is kind of a preview of where we're going this fall. We have, with almost very little downtime, now arrived at the point where we can begin planning for next session. And so we are going to be doing a number of things. First of all, there's going to be very shortly upcoming another meeting of the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. We are going to be looking into engaging a lobbyist for the 2019 legislative session. And there will be a legislative workshop of some kind later in the fall for the board to basically go through some of the questions that you see here on this slide about how we can make our efforts more efficient, build up relationships with key stakeholders, and potentially run legislation next session if we so choose. So that is the short version. I welcome further questions. We can talk after the meeting as well. But thank you again for all of your efforts this session, because it really made a difference, and we've made a lot of key progress. So thank you.
Hillary, thank you. Before I open it for questions, I'd like to just make a couple quick comments. First, I don't think this board could have navigated the last several weeks without the enormous and Herculean effort you've put forth on behalf of SVCEA and CalCCA's. It's incredible, and we are very fortunate to have you. So thank you from all of us. Secondly, I want to really commend you on navigating our inboxes with what really is urgent and helping motivate this group to help respond as needed. You've done a terrific job. Thank you for that as well. Thirdly, on the far chance that Governor Brown is tuned in and watching and listening to what is going on at SVCE board meetings, we urge Governor Brown to veto this SB 237 for multiple reasons, not the least of which is that it is inherently unfair and may harm the CCAs that are still in their infancy in the state, and arguably will do severe damage to the goals that we've set to reach as a state and in our own communities. So if you're watching, please veto SB 237. I also want to urge my fellow board members to make your questions and comments as briefly as possible. I have been assured that the Legislative Committee will dive deeply into this most recent set of legislation and come back with recommendations as need be. So if you have questions for Hillary, this would be a great time to ask them. Yes, Tony.
Okay, Madam Chair, and I'll speak real fast. Hillary, I did have a question. I think that the amount of money spent lobbying by the investor-owned utilities made the news this year at record highs. And so is there still a clear perception that the CCAs feel like underdogs and outgunned when it comes to lobbying in Sacramento?
I think that we draw on different kinds of networks, and CCAs can speak for communities in a way that investor-owned utilities cannot. And we work also alongside a number of the very well-established environmental communities around the state, or environmental organizations. So I think it is a matter of sort of building up and tapping into the potential resources that we already have. We certainly don't have the history that the IOUs have, but I think we have stakeholders that we can speak for if we can activate those relationships. That is a really powerful and unique tool.
I'm going to just add to that. We are under-resourced.
Thank you. And I guess my follow-up question is, do we have, and I'm trying to think of our efforts here, and do we have an effort to build relationships with organizations in our service territory that would be helpful in lobbying? For example, if a business group or community group is sponsoring a run, do we have the resources to contribute to the run and sponsor it so that when we ask them for letters in support of our legislative positions, we have a more receptive ear? And that's probably going far afield from where you're normally responsible for, but so maybe Garesh, maybe we could comment on that.
So a couple of these questions that deal with how lessons learned and how we want to address the future, I would like for us to defer to the ad hoc legislative committee so we can talk about strategy with the ad hoc committee and then bring it back to the full board in a more thoughtful manner with maybe a request for resources and things like that. So your question is it's a question that has been discussed at the Cal CCA board too, about getting those kinds of resources at a state level too.
Any other questions? Oh, yes. Hi, Burton.
Here. Hi there. I just wanted to see if there was any summary of comments that the legislators who voted for SB 237 made. I'm kind of curious, with all of the opposition that was directed towards them, what swayed them?
I would say, very briefly, it had very strong support from labor, and that may have been the linchpin in its success. But if you'd like to talk more in detail, I'd be glad to follow up after the meeting.
Okay, no, I was just curious if anybody had made a public comment stating, I'm really for this because of X. But thanks.
Nancy, I already forgot about you. Do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make at this time?
No, I would just like to say that I appreciate all the focus that staff put on this and identifying the issues and to rally the board members to be effective advocates for Silicon Valley clean energy. It was really a nail biter when we were waiting for the vote, and I think several of us were waiting to get updates and hear the outcome. And I very much look forward to participating in it and working on learning how we can improve things.
Nancy, sorry, I'm going to interrupt. We're having a hard time with audio in-house here. Yeah, I'm not even sure if she's still on the line. Nope, I hear her behind us.
Oh, I hear you.
I assure you I will come back to Nancy's comments if she'd like to have a chance to be heard again. Anything else you'd like to add to the CEO's report?
No.
Okay. As I stated earlier, we're going to flip-flop items 3 and 4, so we'll move on to item 4 right now. approving the amendments to SVCE benefits package. To introduce this topic, I'm going to start with Burton Craig. No? Yes?
Yes, as the chair of the Finance and
As
Administration
the chair of our
Committee.
Finance Committee, thank you.
Yes, so for both items 3 and 4, the Finance and Administration Committee, probably not. There we go. The Finance and Administration Committee and the board, the board, have had about 5 separate discussions over the summer in the development of the benefit recommendations that are being presented tonight and the recommended budget. The Finance Committee has met 3 times, and the board has met twice to discuss the financial and workforce impacts. The committee supports the benefit recommendations as being both competitive in attracting and retaining talent and affordable to the agency. The operating budget is being recommended tonight and was developed with a conservative approach to various risks facing SVCE, but also presents the agency in a financially stable condition. And we, again, heartily recommend that the full board approve both items 3 and 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from staff?
We are ready to make our presentation.
Please, thank you.
Thank you, Director Craig, for that introduction, and good evening, Madam Chair, as well as fellow directors. So just to brief you on why we've been talking about benefits for the last several months is that the agency is in a much different place than it was back in 2016 when the current benefit structure was developed. We are no longer a concept, it's a real agency. We're no longer living off the member agency's funds, but we are now self-sufficient and financially stable. And it's also a different environment that the agency is in today than it was back in 2016. And just around that circle of SVCE are not only increased demands of the agency, but in turn increased demands of our employees. And the time is now more than ever to be able to attract and retain the top talent to keep SVCE thriving. And we have all sorts, and that's certainly not a comprehensive list, but all sorts of demands on the agency, whether it's customers expecting more, which they should, issues, as you just heard from Hillary, with the CPUC, as well as legislative programs you'll hear later from Amy, as well as maintaining strong finances with the creditors. So achieving SVC's mission, you're going to see in the budget presentation that we've taken certain assumptions in this budget that would show us with less revenues next year than where we currently are at. And normally the reaction would be, if you have less revenues next year than this year, let's freeze positions, let's cut benefits, let's not hire folks. That's usually one of the knee-jerk reactions. And our proposal tonight is counterintuitive to that, and that with all these challenges facing us, is now more than ever we need to be able to enhance the benefits to not only be competitive and enhance the employees' work life, but also keep this agency alive. And so our objective tonight is to manage our business risk not only being helping out employees, but also a risk to this agency if we don't attract and retain employees. By changing our employees' benefits to create enterprise-aligned incentives for a healthy, happy, and productive workforce. So we will focus tonight on time off enhancements, and we have 4 policies to present, as well as health and welfare. We also did do a compensation study, and that's built into the salary tables of the budget presentation and the resolution. So we'll cover that in a separate presentation. But this, for benefits, we'll look at time off and health and welfare. And if you think we've been talking a lot about compensation and benefits, it's because we have been talking a lot about compensation and benefits over the last 6 months, and it's important. It's an important topic to spend a lot of time on. And we kicked off this topic back in April with budget priorities to this board. I'll point out that in July, we also conducted an employee survey to get feedback from the employees on what benefits that they're looking for. As Director Craig mentioned, we had several meetings throughout the summer with the Finance and Administration Committee for input and development in tonight's proposal. With the conclusion of bringing a proposal to you and recommendation tonight to this board, our feeling is that once these benefits are voted for approval, that this topic, let Girish and I then go to work in implementing this, but we'll probably be set with compensation and benefits for the next few years. So let's get right into time off. We're looking at 4 proposals tonight. So challenges such as work-life balance. We have a solution, which is a policy that would provide the week between Christmas and New Year's Eve, any business days between that week would be paid holidays for our employees. We essentially would be shutting the office down. And in the policy, we have it that this would be a 2-year trial. We'll come back to you in 2020 to see if there was some sort of risk to operations by shutting down the office that week. So we'll have a chance to review this if it doesn't work. But that's proposal number 1 for time off. We also have a small workforce, and you'll see in the budget that 90% of our cost is power supply. We have low overhead, keeps us nimble, but also means we have a small workforce. And so many times folks have to work weekends and nights and holidays just because that's what we have to do. A solution for that would be to offer a management leave policy. It would be up to 40 hours of paid time off for exempt employees. Our thought process there was folks that are working after hours, non-exempt employees are paid overtime. This management leave would be a little different though than paid time off in that you would not carry it over to the next year. It is not something that you would cash out if you leave the agency. We also want to support time off with supporting the mission statement. So we also have presenting tonight a volunteer time off policy, provides up to 40 hours of paid leave for qualified volunteer activities that support the community that we serve. We think that makes sense. And then we want to have flexibility. So we also propose tonight an unpaid personal leave policy. This would provide authorization for the CEO to grant 80 hours of unpaid leave for those emergencies that occur. And if someone is out of paid time off, emergencies happen, we want to have that flexibility to be able to handle that. So these are the 4 time off policies that we're proposing tonight. Now let's get into health and welfare. So to the left is where we're currently at with benefits. So we have $1,000 a month of employee only covered for health premiums. It does not include dependent coverage or vision. And we recently, back in July, set up a flexible spending account for employees, but it's employee funded only. So our proposal tonight is to increase that $1,000 a month to $700 a month with a hybrid approach between traditional benefits as well as a self-directed approach. So to the top of left there with traditional benefits, the changes that we propose tonight would be allow dependents on health care coverage. That was brought up quite a bit on the survey. It makes sense. Let's do that. We also want to provide vision coverage and then also allow dependents on dental coverage. And we will relook at the dental options before the next benefits year and see if there's improvements we can make there. However, we would still maintain the cap on traditional benefits at $1,000 a month. So there wouldn't be a budgetary impact. There'd certainly be a fiscal impact in that you're expanding the use of that $1,000, but not a budgetary impact. We also propose tonight a health retirement account. This would be supplementing the health plan with IRS prescribed benefits that fall under those medical expenses that are allowed. And in this case, SVCE would fund $500 a month per employee to cover those eligible medical expenses and healthcare services that arise. And lastly, we are looking at also funding the flexible spending account, which has already been set up. But we are looking to fund that with $200 a month per employee. And this is where the self-directed comes into play, because the flexible spending account can also be used for non-health care expenses such as public transportation or dependent care. And
Sorry. We didn't catch something in the previous one. It's health reimbursement. It's not
Oh, I'm sorry,
retirement.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with retirement, so it's not a defined benefit or anything like that.
So you're saying the actual title of it,
Health reimbursement.
Health
Yeah.
reimbursement?
The report has reimbursement. We just,
Yeah, I'm saying the report has retirement, because I was going to ask that question where
Yes.
this name comes from, and I wanted to make sure the public understands this is
Yes.
not a benefit for when
Correct.
people retire.
no, this is
Okay.
in the year, and once you see it, Don explain it, we'll get more clear. It's just
Thank you for that
reimbursement.
clarification. So just to look at the characteristics between a health reimbursement account and the flexible spending account. I won't go through each one of these line items, but I'll just focus on, if you go about 5 questions down, would be if the employee doesn't spend it all, how much can be carried over to next year? So the nice thing about the health reimbursement account is that we can put $500 a month in at the end of the year. The employee would have $6,000 a month, $6,000 for the year. And if they don't use it, it just carries over to next year and it accumulates. So that supports the not only attracting employees with better benefits, but also supports the retaining of employees, because that benefit carries over to next year if they don't use it. Also there's an incentivizing for the employee that because this is now their money to carry over to next year, rather than maxing out the spending of benefits, this incentivizes the employee to maybe shop around for better benefits so they can keep that balance intact or growing to next year when they think they're going to need it. So there's a attracting and retaining part of this that we think is quite nice. And then with flexible spending account, if they don't spend it, then that is lost. A couple questions down from there. What happens when the employee leaves SVCE? So if someone has accumulated $12,000 in the HRA and they leave, that money just comes back to Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And the same would go with the FSA during the year. And lastly, can I use it for things other than healthcare? The last question there, and we covered that earlier, where on the HRA, health reimbursement account, no, but on the FSA, you have options such as transportation and dependent care, or even parking for work-related activities. So in summary, the proposals that we have tonight manage the business risk. It's not just risk of losing unhappy employees, but it would also be a risk to the future of SVCE. These proposals support the attract and retain goals, as I mentioned earlier, with the carryover of the HRA funds, as well as supplementing the FSA. And just to also clarify, so right now we're at $2,650 for a single person on FSA. If we put in $200 a month, essentially that's $2,400 for the year. So that employee can then put in the balance of another $250 tax-free money into the FSA, but that $2,650 is capped between what we put in as well as what the employee. The recommendation tonight is both affordable, and when I say affordable, I mean sustainable. So some of the regulatory risks that you've heard earlier from Hillary, if those do come to fruition, we wouldn't be back to you saying we need to cut these benefits. And supports the strategic plan as the best place to work. From a fiscal perspective here, not sure what's going on here. Okay, there we go. So from a fiscal impact perspective, time off changes. So you could make the argument that there's a productivity impact by increasing the time off, paid time off or other time off. However, there is not a fiscal impact, and if there was a productivity impact, we would be back to the board and address that. Upgrade to existing traditional benefits. Again, from a budgetary impact, we are not seeing any increase in cost there. So with the HRA, if somebody's premiums do go up to $1,200 a year, we're still capped at $1,000. The HRA does not pick up that extra $200. So zero budgetary impact from upgrading the traditional benefits. For the HRA FSA, we're talking $700 a month per employee. Based on 25 FTEs or full-time equivalents, that comes out to about $200,000, a little over $200,000 a year in incremental health cost. And our all-in benefits, looking at this from a $1,700 per month per employee, assuming everyone participates, would come out to about $500,000 a year in total benefits cost. And just as a reminder, our personnel cost, including this proposal, would be around 2% of our operating revenues, and we still remain competitive from not only other CCAs, but also we looked at a JPA, Public Power, as well as Sunnyvale and Mountain View as two of our member agencies to see how we compete. And is this also competitive in costs, in that this amounts to around a 25% adder to salaries and wages. So just to recap, our recommendations tonight: time off policies, management leave, paid holidays during the week of Christmas and New Year's, a volunteer time off policy, and an unpaid personal leave policy. For health and welfare changes, traditional benefits, we'd like to include dependents on the traditional benefits. However, that won't be enacted until February 1st. That's just a constraint that we have from our provider from CalChoice. But we can act on, for October 1st, begin paying for vision out of the traditional benefits, as well as including dependents on dental. And for the health reimbursement account, as well as the flexible spending account, it's a funding of $500 per month per employee for HRA and $200 a month per employee for FSA. And our roadmap over the next 3 or 4 months is, assuming board approval tonight, October 1st, we'll have in place the time off policies, as well as the improvements to vision and dental. We'll then go to work between now and February 1st, really the new benefits year, to begin that implementation process. And that also includes extensive employee communications. We'll have an enrollment period in January 2019, and we will have better benefits in place February 1st, 2019. That concludes the presentation. I do have a supplemental slide that just gives an example of where we think this is going to be very easy to use for the employees, and that they would have a debit card for the FSA and a debit card for the HRA. And there's some details we need to work out, but we're going to try to make this as simple to use for the employees. Remind the board that this is a voting item tonight, and I defer to the board for decision and or discussion.
Thank you. So by way of procedure, we're going to have questions from the board for Dawn, then we'll have public comment on this item, then we'll bring the conversation back up here. I'll call on Nancy first for her thoughts, then board comments, and hopefully we'll get to a place where we're ready to make a motion and take a vote. Okay? Are there questions for Dawn? Yes, hi, Tony.
So apologize if I missed something here. Can you talk again about the holiday policy? You mentioned that you're going to be offering time off between the New Year's or Christmas and New Year's break. What do we have going on now versus what their policy is that's going to make this a revenue neutral?
It will, right now, we currently have the office open between Christmas Day and New Year's for business days, and the office is open. And if somebody wants to take the time off, they would just use their PTO or paid time off. What this policy would do is, instead of somebody using their PTO during that week of Christmas and New Year's, we would make that a paid time off holiday for the employees. So, for 4 days, yes. So, when we say no fiscal impact, we mean is that we're going to pay the employee to be there or pay them not to be there, but there's no fiscal impact there. There might be a productivity impact, and that's why in this policy, we have this enacted for the next 2 years, and then we want to come back to the board in 2020 to review it to see if there was an operational risk to the agency.
I guess what I'm getting at is if the employees have their set PTO, right, and say they're given a certain amount of hours every single year, right, are they allowed to carry those hours or cash those hours out? Is that part of the policy at all?
So they can carry over a maximum of 240 PTO hours.
Okay.
And we do not have an option right now to cash out PTO ahead of leaving the agency, but if you did leave the agency, you would get whatever you have accrued. But what we're offering here is instead of using your PTO, these would be paid time off holidays between Christmas and New Year's.
So are we offsetting the PTO that staff currently have with the 4 days that we're now going to pay them for?
So we're
reducing those 4 days off of their current PTO?
No, currently, if the employee does not want to work between Christmas and New Year's, they have to use PTO. In this case, by making it a paid time off holiday, they're getting to keep that balance.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
First of all, thank you to staff and the Finance Committee for working hard to put this package together. I had a question about the health insurance. So if you could, I guess, clarify, we do the $1,000, and right now, does that pretty much cover the cost for our employee? It seems like there's excess that it could cover a dependent. Is that the case right now?
To your question, currently where we stand, based on the demographics of our employees, some have a balance, others are right near the top. And
Okay.
adding dependents to that certainly would increase that usage of the $1,000.
And then if they do go over, is that where they could use the SAH?
So if they go, so if
funding?
their premiums right now
I hate
are
to say
$1,000 or $1,200.
I'm sorry?
If the premiums, let's say, move up to $1,200 because they've added dependents, the
Okay.
cap to SVCE is still $1,000.
Right.
So the health reimbursement account does not pay for the premium
But they
above the
could
$1,000.
use that to pay for it.
What's that? I'm sorry.
The employee could use the HRA.
Not to pay for premiums. They can
Oh.
use it to supplement other medical expenses as prescribed by the IRS, but not for premiums.
Okay. And then is that the one that they have to use up by the end of the year, or is it the
So it's the FSA that they would have to use by the end of the year. The HRA carries over year.
And then the FSA, was that the one you mentioned, employee contributions are allowed to a certain limit?
So if currently we're at $2,650 for a single employee, that they can put in an FSA.
Okay.
So under this proposal, we would put in $2,400, they could put in $250. But they can't put in also
Okay.
another $2,400.
Got it.
It's whatever is, and that's capped, those are the guardrails as prescribed by the IRS.
And that's the one when if they were to leave, they could not.
Right. Either plan,
Even-
if they leave, they lose the FSA funds or the HRA,
Even if they put into it?
even if they put into it.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
well, if they put in the 200, let's say the 250,
Yeah, They don't get that back?
the employee would have to then work that out with the next employer and getting that back. It's their money, but the 2,400 certainly is ours.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay, great, thank you.
Jeannie?
Okay, so I want to go back to the paid holidays, okay? So are we accounting for it then differently than their PTO? So if I hire on and I have, 2 weeks of PTO, if I choose to take the time between Christmas and New Year's off, I still get paid, and I don't have to be in the office. Can I choose to be in the office, and then does that week get added to my PTO, or is it use it or lose it?
Well, with the PTO, you can carry it over.
Yeah, I know, but I'm
next
talking
year.
about your paid holidays. How are we accounting for that?
Right,
Is that
so-
additive to your PTO and applies to PTO rules, or is it a use it or lose it?
So it's a holiday that if you don't use it, you lose it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make.
If you have
I think that's what
160
Tony was kind of
hours-
going for, trying to figure out what we.
Right, if you have 160 hours of PTO, this does not impact that balance.
Right. Okay, so your PTO stays intact,
Right.
whether or not you choose to be probably the only employee in the office during the holiday.
Right.
Okay, got
Got
it.
it.
And then on the HRA, how do we account for it in terms of our books? Because and where I'm going with this is there's no cap on this thing. Okay, so if I'm a 10-year employee at $6,000 a year and I've never touched this, I have $60,000 of Silicon Valley Clean Energy money sitting where? Do we accumulate this all in a separate account?
So
And we're
it
not
would-
setting any, and are we going to set any cap at some point?
Well, I think in the next couple of years, and when we come back to benefits, we'll have an answer better for you on if we do need to set a cap. But just to answer the accounting question, it would be treated as a liability on the balance sheet. That's been earned by the employee, and as long as they're with us, that accumulates, and you would see that as a liability on the balance sheet.
So I guess what I'd like to suggest on that one is that I think once we have it in place, and as you said, a couple of years down the road, to try and understand, to have this full liability remaining on the books for years and years, I'm not sure who benefits from that, because I don't know, unless an employee just has, catastrophic type of insurance, if this is going to now suddenly make up for all of his out-of-pocket, routine expense. I'm just trying to understand how long we carry how much money on the books for this. And again, I'm not looking to say that we need to clear it out at the end of, it's not a use it or lose it type of thing, but there's got to be something between those two extremes that we might want to look at as we start seeing how our employees, after we have some years of understanding how our employees is using
I
it.
couldn't agree more, and I think in a couple of years when we review this to see what works, what doesn't, we'll certainly address that question.
Okay. And then the other one, in terms of the unpaid leave, I'm assuming, and it wasn't clear in the policy, so I'm assuming like all of our other, it's up to 80 hours a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody goes out and they want to extend it, they can only extend it up to that 80 hours ceiling, right?
Correct. Now, if they need to go past that 80 hours, that would be something that the CEO and management would work out.
Okay, so it's not really a hard,
Right now,
I'm trying to understand whether there's a real hard cap on that or if there's some degree of flexibility.
so the reason we brought it up is we ran into a couple of situations where I didn't have the ability to provide unpaid leave because that wasn't an authority that you provided. So we just picked a number of 80 hours. So right now, that's the authority that I have if you approve this. So if someone asks for more than 80 hours, I will not be able to provide it to them.
Okay, so that's okay. So again, so you mentioned like the holiday shutdown, that kind of being a 2-year pilot. So can I assume that if we're passing this tonight, which hopefully we are going to be passing this tonight, that maybe in 2 years, we kind of having completed kind of a, where are we, how,
Yeah.
how's all the different elements, working in terms of, from an employee perspective, from the business perspective, et cetera. So can we maybe
Yeah,
consider?
I think it's factored in.
Is that
A
the whole thing?
2-year review of particularly this holiday
Yeah, I was looking
component.
at more,
And
I'm looking at
the whole
everything.
benefits package?
Yeah, that's
Sure.
what I would think I know I would
Appropriate.
feel better about that. Because, you've spent a lot of time putting this together, and I think we owe it to all of ourselves, including our employees, is what we put in place with all these wonderful intentions, is it meeting the intentions that we were trying to do? And I just think, it's like, measure it, right? So I would say the whole thing come back so that we all feel good again.
Let me go on with some of the questions, and I'm going to start with Tony, then Rod, and come back to you, Liz. Nancy, if you have any questions, I'll call on you after Liz. Thank you, Tony.
I had two. One is for Grish. Why do we have to have a cap on the amount of unpaid time off you can grant? I could see someone needing a 6-month leave of absence to take care of a sick relative and is a highly valued employee, and we may be able to fill her or his position with a temp, and they come back 6 months later and we're all happy.
I don't have a good reason for ADRs. We literally, as we were looking at, the whole spectrum of benefits, we picked that and we didn't actually question that too much. I think in terms of providing flexibility to our workforce and flexibility to me to allow for unanticipated situations, I think I'd be completely open in changing the recommendation to something more than ADRs.
I would.
And just to add to that comment, for employees out for 4 to 6 months, we do have long-term disability type coverage.
Although that's a kind of a special circumstance to use it. I see no personally reason to limit it whatsoever. I would encourage you, I'll be suggesting we just allow you to have discretion on that. The question I had for you, Don, was on the FSAs, there is the ability to set aside additional money specifically for dependent care in an FSA. Do we already have that and we're not touching it, or do we need to change our action tonight to make sure that we're actually encouraging you guys to do that for the employees?
So currently, an employee could also put in up to $5,000 for dependent care. What we're saying tonight is right now we offer nothing into that as far as SVC funding of the FSA.
Okay.
So
but
we're going to cap it at
exist.
$2,400,
Okay.
and the employee can use it as they wish.
Rod.
Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate all the effort that's gone in. I take it this process over some months has really caused us to reach out to our employees and find out what they're looking for. We recognize that these are very competitive times. We want this agency to be able to attract and retain great talent, and we want to compensate them fairly. So, and I take it that for the employees as a whole, this is the package that they bought into very largely. Is that a fair statement? These are the kind of benefits that they're looking for, as contrasted to where we started here, where we were maybe salary rich and cafeteria rich and conventional benefits poor.
So I think there's a balance. When we did the employee survey, we got a lot of comments, and we asked the kinds of benefits that employees wanted. I'd say this package doesn't provide everything that employees wanted. And that, to me, is perfectly fine. That's my responsibility to balance the risks and mission of the organization and provide you a recommendation. I think this is an adequate balance, and we'll be discussing it with our staff tomorrow based on your feedback today. But I would say in terms of flexibility, additional work-life balance, some aspect of self-directed, allow for more of that $1,000 to be utilized, I think we've gone a long way. But it's not everything that employees ask for.
Okay. But I mean, in terms of an employee who says, hey, benefits, forget it, I just want a bigger paycheck, hard cash, that's not what our employees are looking for. They really are looking for a set of benefits that more look like what I would call conventional benefits.
It was an interesting mix.
Yeah.
I think we had quite a few comments leaning towards more of the traditional benefits.
Okay.
I think as we went through the journey with the Finance and Administration Committee of exploring different ways of offering benefits, we went down the path of just increasing salary and letting employees have maximum flexibility, we did not get positive feedback to that proposal from our employees. And further to that, we did some of our own research, just using Google, et cetera, and it's not an atypical response from
Yeah.
employees. Employees do want the employer to provide some of the traditional benefits like healthcare, dental, vision, and some of the other pieces. So we balance this out. It's literally, when you look at the dollars, it's about.
And a case could be made
two-thirds,
that
one-third.
we can, having a bigger pool than one person or a family, we might be able to do better in procuring those benefits and paying for them.
Right, and we are looking at additional things. There are other CCAs. We're looking at, maybe there's a way of pooling some of this with other
Oh, yeah.
CCAs.
Great idea.
Some of the next steps, we are looking at, increasing our efficiencies and how some of these benefits are provided to our employees. I think implementation is also very important in terms of the experience that employees have in accessing these benefits.
Okay.
Anything else, Ron?
Yes.
All right.
I too have been in a lot of organizations where there weren't caps on various of these accounts. And so you would have employees that would rack up enormous things. I think particularly in an era where people may not really understand that when they leave, they might lose this big pot of money. They're putting it in. We're putting it in, and then all of a sudden, right, we get to a place where we're both really challenged. So I too have concerns about any of these things being uncapped, including PTO. I mean, in a lot of companies now, right, the standard is you can accumulate so much, but at some point, it really does become you got to use that vacation or you lose it. And for liability purposes, yeah, I really support the idea. When we come back and rethink this, I'd really like us to look at common standards here. But my biggest question that I've sort of saved for the end is this. If we take this action tonight, how will our total compensation, including all these benefits, put our employees by classification best we can match with other classifications? How will our employees be stacked up in terms of total comp against particularly MCE and Peninsula Clean Energy?
Competitive.
Okay. Can you say more than that one word?
Just a few, we would be a tad bit better than the benefits that's being offered from Marin as well as Peninsula. And through the compensation study that we did this summer, our salary tables are right in line with where they are at, so we are competitive.
Before we take this action or after?
After we take this action.
Okay. So my only feedback for staff about bringing this item up is I think it could have been useful ahead of time for us all to have maybe gotten the details. Here's where we're at now. Here's where those agencies are at. Were we to take this action, here's by classification, right, what we think total comp would look like. And that's just some feedback for you, because at the end of the day, that's what I really think matters. Do our employees like the benefits and compensation package we're offering? And then, yes, are we paying competitive? Are we paying the market?
Thank you for those comments, and if I may address a comment you made a little while before, I do think the idea of having a review, we can make it coterminous with, you've already approved the policy of us updating our compensation survey every 2 years. We can bring it all together. We can have just a comprehensive review of compensation, benefits, and of course, you know that if there are any need for changes before that period, I will be in front of you. But I think that's a great idea to look at it comprehensively,
So
see what's worked and not worked.
I know you've done a lot of work behind the scenes. I've talked to both of you in advance of this meeting. I really, it feels to me like you've done a very thorough job here in both surveying employees as well as making sure we are competitive, and that is key for me, so I'll be supporting this.
Liz?
Thank you. Not to spend too much time on it, but following on Commissioner Abikoba, or Director Abikoba's question, we talked about a lot, so I may have a confusion here. I thought between the, is it HSH and the
HRA.
HRA and the
FSA.
whatever. I thought at one point there was money that the employee did put in that they could take out. They just wouldn't get the money that we put in.
So in the FSA, if there is a balance that they put into it and they leave the agency, that's their funds. But the 2,400 that we put into the FSA.
So they can take that money with them.
I want to clarify that with you, and let me do a little more research after this meeting
Because
and get back to you on that.
it's a relevant point, because I was pretty sure I understood in our discussions that they could in fact take it with them.
If I could
Yes,
just,
please.
in terms of quantifying that,
Yes, please.
that's $250 a year.
Yeah, right.
And, yeah, so,
Right.
but we will clarify that. So it's $250 a year
Thank you
is
for
the
that.
maximum amount that an employee can put into an FSA, because we're putting in 2,400. And when we put money into that, that's our money, meaning SVCE. So it's $250 that would be at risk for the employee per year. The HRA, only we can put money in. Employees cannot put money in.
It was that simple when we finished our discussions. So hopefully that helps clarify. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nancy, if you're there, do you have any questions before I open it to public comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but at least up here, it's difficult for us to discern what's being said. I don't know if you guys can hear what's being said better than us. I'm getting a few shaky hands. Give it a shot, Nancy. Let's try to see what we can work with here.
Okay, I appreciated the comments about staff getting, or the people planning the benefits getting input from the staff. So, and that the proposal morphed a bit due to that. So, could you describe kind of the mechanism for getting the staff input?
Nancy, we're getting some feedback here again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Nancy, are you on speakerphone or are you on regular?
I am on a cheap headset.
We're getting a fair amount of feedback.
If you're
Nancy.
on speakerphone, can you come off of speakerphone?
I think we lost her again. So I'm happy if there's a way to do it for her to just call me or text me on my cell phone, and I will read her question out. I don't know if that's even allowable, but in an effort to find a quick solution that's workable here, Nancy, I'm happy for you to send a quick email to Andrea, and she can give you my personal cell phone, which I have with me at the dais. I will keep it.
Yeah, go to public comment.
Or let's go to public comment, okay? If there's anyone here who'd like to ask any questions or express any concerns or thoughts about this, I welcome that now. Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back up here for board comments. I did suggest I'd let Nancy go first, but since she's not able to tune in right this minute, I'll start with you, Howard.
Sure, I had no questions, but I want to just set some context. You know, when we started this thing in 2016, now I know cities did a lot of work before that, but when this board formed and we started, we did have this issue of switching from some staff support to a paid organization. And as we went through 2016, we started hiring people, and the questions of benefits came up. And you have to put yourself back into those board member shoes. We were on borrowed money that came out of our city's funds, in cities where some of our fellow council members were saying this is a crock, we shouldn't be wasting city money on it, right? Many of us lived through that. And so when we started, and I apologize to staff, plug your ears, we were chintzy. And we always said at that point, once we actually are a stable organization that has revenue and cash flow, we will normalize our benefits, based on what was going on in the market. And so some of the stuff that we did sounds sort of crazy, but at the time it made sense. We provided a health plan with no dental, no vision, no possibility for you even to pay money to put your dependents on the plan, right? That is where we started, and we were a startup on borrowed public money. We had to be there. And so we started almost 6-7 months ago with our new CEO, Grish, welcome, 6 months, thank you, saying, okay, look, we know where we are on benefits, but this is one of these things. Looking at our compensation and benefits has to be unwound so that we can normalize to what's going on in the industry as an ongoing successful enterprise. And so this process and where we've come has come out of that. Yes, we are actually going to spend more money than we were last year, hands down. But I remind everybody, last year we were operating on a bootstrap of city money and all of that. And it's been, 18 months of operation. And now we need to bring ourselves in line with the rest of the industry. I know, Don, you've showed us the different charts on compensation. We've seen a lot in the Finance Committee. I don't know how that gets packaged for these situations, but we should provide more data. We are not wildly paying more than other organizations, and even when you throw all this stuff in, we're talking about single-digit percentages that are probably in the margin of error for what other cities are doing. Now, the other thing that Tom was asked, and he's actually responded to very well, what sorts of things can we do that are not Grish?
I'm like, who's Tom?
That other guy. I put
know who you're talking about.
I put myself back in 2016, and all of a sudden my brain got stuck there. Fast forward to 2018, we asked Garish, that new guy down there. Sorry, Garish.
All good.
What can we do that builds satisfaction within an organization that doesn't actually cost us money? Because we all know a lot of the goodness of being on a job is not actually the paycheck. And so we've added a bunch of other things that actually really don't cost a lot of money. Team building sorts of stuff, picnic/party, free electric car charging for our employees, which is very synergistic with our mission statement, I might add. The flexible spending accounts where they can contribute, we're not putting anything in. There's a lot of little benefit adjustments that have happened, and some of them have come to us sort of piecemeal. We're out of the free stuff, right? This stuff's going to cost money. So again, I think that this is a coming of age exercise, and there's no way that what we're doing is revenue neutral, even though some of it's kind of been couched that way, I should say. We are paying more, be it more money for some days off, more money because people will now use the full $1,000 for their health insurance up to the cap, where before they really wouldn't. More money, and that we're actually going to put money into accounts for which they have some discretion as to how they spend that money. I get all that, but I think it's a coming of age exercise, and I am proud that we've gotten this far as an organization. And I know the 6 months that we've spent, it's been before the Finance Committee, 3 different forms. We've come to a good place, and I think it's a reasonable plan to try this set of stuff, which I think keeps us very competitive, and then have this sort of stopgap to it, which is we're going to be back in 2 years or less, because it's going to have to line up with benefits years, to re-review. What have we done? Does it make sense for us financially? Is it making sense for our employees benefits-wise, and does it match the rest of the industry? So I'm super fully in support of that. And if nobody else wanted to, I would make a motion that we approve this. And with respect to my colleague right here, there was a small request which I would add on, which is for the unpaid time off. Not the paid time off, not anything that accrues, the unpaid time off that's discretionary, that we give discretion to Grish beyond the 80 hours that he asked for.
Second.
We do have a second here. I heard one over here, but the mic was not on, so we'll take Rob's as the official second. Nancy, are you there, and do you have any comments? I don't hear Nancy. I'm going to take a little liberty here and go next, and then I'm happy to call on Tony. And is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment? And Jeannie. Okay, so my comments are just really two simple sentences. The first is that given how frequently and how likely poaching is possible within the industry, within the CCAs up and down the state as they begin to really pop up over and over, I think it's imperative that we do everything we can to make Silicon Valley Clean Energy the place to be, the best place to work, just like our communities we all live in and represent. And then secondly, while this does represent some possible cost increase, it does, in my mind, save us money, because I believe that the most expensive part of running the company is retaining the staff rather than, the hiring and replacing is more expensive than just retaining the key valuable employees we have. So I am also in support of this. I think, what did I just say? Tony next, and then Jeannie. Tony.
Thank you. I just had one request. I know we had discussions about bringing this information back in 2 years. I think that might be a little too long. I think if we're doing a pilot, we may want to look at this sooner than that. My hope would be maybe we can look at this within a year to get a better sense for where things are going. I just think 2 years might be too long for this to go on without getting a sense for where things are before we make a final adoption of whether we want to move this way or not.
So I had made the motion. Let me just ask a little clarification question. There's the full deep dive, which we spent 6 months on. Can we get like a report back in a year that just gives us an overview of where we're at? And if we see problems, we can ask them to go deep, and then they can go deep at 2 years?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I just think 2 years is too long to just let this thing sit without getting a sense for where we are.
Yeah, and with this
appreciate
board,
that too, and
2
I think
years
the-
is infinity, so I 100%.
The board.
I 100% agree with you, and I would be willing to amend my motion to include that.
Got it.
I think leaving it at 2 years in the motion, or as we've already discussed, is sufficient, because I believe the board always has the discretion to agendize that discussion if we feel like after some sort of staff report out.
Yeah, can we get like a staff report in a year?
Okay. Everybody's good with that up here?
I don't know who made the
Does that-
second.
Would you be okay with having staff analyze caps as regards, norm,
Say that again?
having the staff look at caps on some of these accounts?
Is that a question to me?
I'm asking the motion maker.
Okay.
Why don't we add that on as a second
But don't
motion?
they-
Hold on,
We
we're
can
getting
do
muddy
this-
here. We're getting muddy here. I
We
want
are.
to keep it clean. We've got the motion to approve
Yes.
with the addition of allowing Garish the discretion to add paid time off as, unpaid time off as, at his discretion.
Yes.
I don't believe we need to alter the motion from what I'm hearing at the discussion up here. What we've asked the staff to do is some sort of report out next year. It can go to the finance committee. If the finance committee is concerned about anything they see, of course they could ask for it to be agendized and fully discussed at the board next year, and the board would have the authority to make any decisions as
So
necessary.
you want to treat it as direction to staff to give us a report of how's it going in a year?
And I think that's very doable from the head nods I've gotten when I look out.
Yeah, you didn't ask, but my preference would be to bring an information report back to you. Given everything we have on our plate,
Right.
and the amount of time and the friction that it causes within the organization to talk about these things, and given the dollars that we're talking about, we're looking to improve efficiency. So I think a report, an information report to you next summer would be no problem.
Yeah, I think everybody's nodding in agreement. That's good enough. All right, if you're done, I'm going to take it on over this way.
Okay, you addressed one of my concerns, because I don't see us doing a full report out or something like this because, at a year. But if we can have a communique within a year, at a year on this, that would be sufficient for me. But I want to come back to this thing in terms of the unpaid time off. So my thought process is unpaid time off as written right now. I view that as something that the employees use kind of from a unexpected event, kind of like the emergency type of event. Something's happened, I've got, somebody died, I've got this relative who's got special needs, I can't just do traditional time off for that, I really have a bigger problem. It's an emergency, it's an unplanned type of situation. That's when I saw this unplanned, that's what I'm thinking of. What was described over here is what I would call a planned time off. If you want to take, and in my day, it was called a leave of absence. If you want to do something that is more of a planned thing, I have no problem with also giving our CEO the discretion to do a leave of absence, but I don't see it as being identical to the other one. And the reason that there's, to me, a distinction is because as an employee, I don't want to go out for like 2 weeks and then say, now can I expend it for another 2 weeks? And then because of the whole issue of, if I say I'm going to need to go out for 6 months because I've got the care of my grandchild, okay, then that's a planned kind of thing where the CEO now can really look at it from a 6-month window. How do I backfill it? Do I need to backfill it? How am I going to do that? Okay, so I think they're handled from spending all my time at HP in management. There's a different thought process to these two. So I support, for my preference would be to leave what's in there now, but to also verbally say, create a policy that is a leave of absence policy. So if there is something that can be planned for, that is still at the discretion. So it's similar, but it's got a view where we know we can backfill. Because you're not going to backfill, you're not going to get a temp for two week extension, right? And if the employee has something planned, then let him go. Let him go for the extended leave of absence. So that would be my recommendation.
I get the distinction. Could we just turn it around the other way? And the reason I'm thinking this is we could tell Grish that he has discretion and then ask him to come up with a plan to split it into the 2 buckets, of which one of the buckets would have a more defined period. But for right now, we just leave it all up to his discretion so we don't get hamstrung.
I hate to talk about him like he's not in the room,
Yeah.
but.
That guy over there,
So I'll tell you what,
at least you know what his name is, okay?
So Howard, given what's before us is actually approving the policies. So can you state very clearly what you would like to see as the change of the verbiage in the policy? Because that way when we're approving the policy, we know exactly what we're approving.
That it's unlimited staff discretion, which means Garish, and that we're going to ask, which is more direction, which is to come back with a policy that splits it into the 2 categories as you've outlined, which means one will be a more your defined thing and one will be your more unexpected things. If we approved it as you mentioned, which was let's limit it to 80 hours and then have him come back with the one that would have more discretion, I think we just tie his hands until he comes back.
Okay, I
So
want to
saying
be
split
careful
it
here,
around.
though, because I feel like we're still in a company with 25 employees here. We don't need to micromanage this from up here, and I think the discretion already is at our CEO's feet. So I want to be careful that we've given some direction here. If you feel like you need a paid time off policy in writing, I would say by all means go write it.
It's already here.
Okay.
He did, but he limited it to 80 hours.
What he has today is 80 hours.
And
That's
it's-
what I'm saying, it's what Howard's, it's the motion that's on the table to have the
Eliminate.
80 hours, or to say absence without pay for,
At the CEO's discretion,
period, at the.
Yeah, this is the without pay,
period.
and so that makes it all at the CEO's discretion without a limit.
Okay. Any other questions or more discussion? Nancy, did you manage to find us again? Oh, okay. Oh, hello.
Can you hear me?
We barely can hear you. We've had a robust discussion about it. I have to tell you, as just reading the room up here, I think we have consensus and we're ready to vote. Do you have any comments that would be of concern that we need to take into consideration, or can we call for the roll call vote?
Well, because of the issues, I'm not really sure what I didn't follow the discussion all that well because of the issues. So, it's a little awkward, I guess, but as I understand it, the motion is to give Grish the direction to come back with a policy regarding What exactly?
Unpaid, extended unpaid time off.
Okay, so he'd be coming back with further clarification on that, and otherwise, we approve it as it is?
Otherwise, we approved it as is.
Or that's the motion, okay. Yeah, my only question was, well, I guess, you know, since there's a motion on the table, it's fine. Okay, I'll just save my questions since I missed the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, I'd like to call for a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Director Smith, I'll start with you. Your vote on this item, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Alternate Director Inda?
Yes.
Alternate Director Yulo?
Yes?
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Stinks? Director Rennie?
Yes.
Chair Corrigan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abikoga?
Aye.
Director Gibbons?
Aye.
Director Bruins?
Definitely.
Director Craig?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Nancy, thank you. And I want to thank you, Don, for doing all this work, and thank the staff. This conversation can sometimes be very uncomfortable while you're sitting here, but we really do value you and appreciate the work you do.
And we love our staff, too.
And we love you, and we want this to be the best place to work. Okay, so we are now going back to item 3 to adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 operating budget and adopt a resolution amending the organization chart, job classifications, and salary schedule. I'm going to start with Burton, who's the chair of the Finance Committee again, and then back to Dawn.
Well, do you want me to say that, basically, what I said before was for items 3 and, basically what I was saying was for items 3 and 4. Okay. So I can repeat it again, or?
Nope, we got it.
No, we got it.
All right.
Ditto.
Still,
Everybody got the
still
message?
wholeheartedly, the Finance Committee is recommending approval of the budget
Great.
after multiple meetings over the summer to discuss this.
Perfect. Okay, and while Dawn is getting set up here, we'll just take one more second.
Thank you for your patience, Madam Chair.
No problem.
Okay, so for tonight, we have the fiscal year 2018 and 19 recommended budget. This is a voting item. Just to recap the calendar of the budget process. So we brought to you budget priorities back in April. We've met with the Finance and Administration Committee throughout this process. We also amended our reserves policy. We had a proposed budget to you in July, and we'll point out the differences between that budget we presented in July versus tonight. And then tonight we have our recommended operating budget for approval to be effective October 1st. So the fiscal year 2018-19 operating budget does place SVCE in a financially stable condition. It is a balanced budget. We do enter this budget year with close to $70 million. We'll end the year with in unrestricted cash. So we enter this new budget already in a strong position. And the budget that we present to you tonight does show a net surplus of balance available for reserves of just a shade under $30 million. This budget does include a full year of the city of Milpitas, as opposed to the current budget where Milpitas came online in June. But we do have significant impact from projected movements in the PCIA charge as well as in PG&E rates, and we'll get right into that. So if everything went the way we would like it to go, PG&E rates would not change. The PCIA would not change, and we would maintain our 6% discount that we currently have. And if that were the case, we would have around $54 million of net surplus for next year, and just a shade under $50 million as we have some unhedged power supply that would just grow. There's some based on current market prices. So a little bit higher power supply next year, but we'd still be a very healthy $50 million. But we have as Hillary pointed out, we had the proposed decision on the PCIA, and we were thinking that that would have minimal impact to the PCIA. Then the alternate proposed decision was released, and that could have an impact of somewhere around 30%. Now, we've asked Pacific Energy Advisors for advice on what we should build into this budget for tonight. They gave us 21%, but that's subject to change over the next couple of weeks when we have a decision made. Having said that, if we would go up to 21%, you would see our net surplus drop to just a shade under 39 million. You'll notice at the bottom that the residential rates between current and what the impact would be with the PCIA does not change. And the reason it doesn't is because I'm assuming in this budget that any increase to the PCIA is not going to be paid for by increasing our rates, but rather comes off our margin. Now, PG&E rates is a significant impact to this budget. In June, they forecast a 13% decrease in PG&E rates. Just recently, it came in around 5%. We'll have another crack at rates in November. For this budget, we're assuming something between that 5% that was released and 13% that was first mentioned. So we're looking at a budget assumption drop in PG&E rates of 8%. And I want to point out that PG&E rates dropping, as by definition, SVCE as a community choice, does imply competition, and choice competition should mean lower rates. If PG&E is indeed lowering their rates because of the pressure that CCAs are putting on them, that's a good thing. It may impact our margin, but that's part of the mission statement. If we leave our discount to PG&E rates at 6%, you would see that our net surplus now falls to about 15.4 million. And if the PCI stays at 21% and there's no change to PG&E rates, you would see that we'd start bleeding cash in fiscal year 2020. So our recommendation tonight for this budget is to show a 1% discount to PG&E rates. In that scenario, we have just a shade under 30 million of net surplus. You also would see that the residential rate, and I'm using average rates for commercial, industrial, and I'm looking at rates as of January 1st. Obviously, commercial industrial does fluctuate with the seasons, but I'm just using the rate as of January 1st and a average. You would see that our SVCE rates to compete with PG&E would be 3% lower than they are today, and we would still be at a healthy surplus. I also want to point out that I mentioned SVCE discount to PG&E rates as a budget assumption only. Don Bray will be back in November, December timeframe to talk about rates and where we're going, but this is just for budget assumptions only. Just to point out some other scenarios with this. If PCIA did come up with 30% increase and PG&E did actually lower their rates by 13%, you would see that we would be near a break even for this year and certainly bleeding cash in 2020. But indeed, if PG&E does lower their rates by 5%, and a very likely scenario is we end up about a 20% increase in the PCIA, and we maintain a 1% discount to PG&E, we'd have a very healthy surplus, and you would see, because we're already very competitive PG&E, if they do indeed lower their rates by 5%, it would be virtually no change in our rates compared to where we are today. I've set this up as a scenario, so there may be questions you have or scenarios that you want to explore tonight, but our budget assumptions that we are using is 8% for PG&E, 21% for PEA, and maintaining a 1% discount to PG&E. Before I get into the next slides, are there any questions?
Howard.
It's a question that we may already know the answer to, but just for clarification, this just sets sort of the budgetary parameters that we go forward with, and when we start to get real information about the PCIA and PG&E's rates, Then in another meeting, we're actually going to have the discussion about what we're going to do with our rates.
Absolutely.
So you're going to budget 1%, but we may choose to stay at 6%, or we may choose some other parameter. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. So we covered the reason for comparing to the mid-year, what the decrease is and what the causes for that are. So I won't get into the revenues part of this flow chart. Power supply is certainly higher because we have a full year of City Milpitas. We also are, because of regulatory risk, we are filling in our open PCC2 positions with more expensive PCC1. And one of the differences we made with this budget versus June is we also built in 3% contingency, and we saw where that contingency is good to build in based on some very expensive power prices that occurred this past summer. Billing, this would be what we pay for data management as well as Pacific Gas and Electric billing services, slightly higher because we have a higher meter count. Other operating is about $2.5 million unfavorable. We have new positions. We have better benefits, and those benefits that were just previously voted on are built into this budget. And then we have professional services increasing to support all the needs of the agency, such as power supply and legislative and regulatory, as well as a slight increase due to a settlement on the bond methodology. And it should cost us $147,000 as a minimum requirement, but we should also get $100,000 back from CPUC. Debt service, in the consent calendar, we did approve a $20 million line of credit, so we're looking at $30,000 in financing costs. We do not expect to draw on that line of credit, but it's there in case of an emergency, and it helps us with power supply negotiations. And then programs is just slightly higher than the mid-year based on higher sales. The main revenue inputs would be 256,000 customer accounts, of which the majority are residential, but not a surprise. In our territory, 4 million megawatt hours of energy sales, of which 2/3 is commercial and industrial. So the decisions on SB 237 disproportionately impact SVCE. And a cash flow, our total revenue is coming in $260.1 million, of which 99.5% is based on user fees. And then on expenses, 92 cents of every dollar that goes out the door is based on power supply. And as mentioned earlier on the benefits presentation, personnel is around 2% of our total cost. Speaking of personnel, the organizational chart in the resolution that we're asking for approval tonight includes 25 full-time equivalent positions versus 21 that we have today. The boxes in yellow incorporates the broadbanding approach that we have talked about with this board in previous months. It gives flexibility for SVCE not only vertically within departments, but also horizontally across the agency. And so the boxes in yellow doesn't mean that we're going to fill every one of those. It just gives us the flexibility to move people around. So you can see, for instance, Director of Decarbonization and Grid Innovation Programs, Amy, has 3 positions allotted to her, but she has 8 boxes. And so that's the broadbanding approach that we've talked about, and the job descriptions are attached in that resolution. Projected reserves. So with the assumptions that I gave you tonight, with the where we think we're going to land with PG&E rates, where our discount's going to be, as well as the PCIA, at the end of this fiscal year, because we're already in a good position on cash, we would be at least ending the year already at our minimum target. Now, what you've seen before is we would get to our maximum of reserves, and just to remind you what those min and maxes are, min would be 25% of the following year's total operating expense budget. Max is 270 days of cash liquidity, or 75% of the operating budget, and our target is 50%, which is that blue line. We would be, even if under these stressful conditions we've talked about, if those remained intact, we would certainly be at our target within 3 years. And I just want to point out, look at the USS SVCE to the right, and you see some cloudier skies, rougher waters.
It's in reverse.
But you have a strong ship, and I just want to applaud the board over the past 2 years for making decisions that puts us in a strong position as we take on stormier weather, if you will. And I have a list of the items that you voted on that puts us in good shape, and there's certainly many more. So our recommendation tonight is to adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 operating budget. Adopt Resolution 2018-10, which shows the organizational chart you saw on a previous slide, as well as the salary tables that were amended based on the compensation study, as well as a 3.4% across the board for min and maxes. That will be part of the performance review process, but those ranges were adjusted 3.4% based on a CPI urban index for Bay Area. I also want to point out that, as Director Miller mentioned, we have several inputs in this budget that are not concrete, and we'll know hopefully the PCIA in a couple of weeks. We'll know rates in November, and we have certainly the unknown with the direct access impact. We will true up this budget again in 2019, so what we get wrong tonight, we'll have a chance 6 months from now or less to make those adjustments to this budget to incorporate where we stand on rates and to quantify what that true impact will be with the passing of SB 237, if indeed that happens.
Or not.
Or not. Stay positive.
Because Jerry's listening to you, right?
So that concludes my presentation. Defer to the board now for discussion and/or decision.
How about let's start with questions. Are there questions for Dawn? Anybody? All right. You don't feel like you have to.
Or the 237 decision, if the bill is not vetoed by the governor, do we think that the positions that we might approve here would deserve further review or pushing out? Or are you in a mode to say, we're betting on success, and even with that, even if 237 goes ahead, we think, these positions are warranted and we need these to be successful?
It's the latter.
Okay.
I think you framed it very well. 237 is a risk on a revenue standpoint, but for our future success, both from the power supply side, the decarbonization of programs, data analytics, for us to show that we are actually bringing innovation on an accelerated basis to the Silicon Valley, we do need those positions.
Okay, got it. I'm good with that.
I just want to remind everybody, this, for some of us, is not our first rodeo. We went through this last year, and PG&E said the same thing. We're going to drop the rates, we're going to drop the rates. So we'll just hope for the same outcome as we go into January of 2019.
They just like to keep us on our toes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good for everybody. If there's no other questions?
When you dance with the elephant, it's easy to get squished, though, so we have to be ever vigilant.
I don't like dancing with elephants. Okay, let's, Nancy, if you're there and you have a thought or a question, I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask that now.
I'm ready to move ahead. I think it's a good report, no question.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure any of
I
us.
think she said she's ready to go ahead.
We're good. Okay, terrific. Tony has a question.
Actually, I was just motioning to remind you to ask Director Smith if she had any questions, but
Oh, Tony, thank you.
hearing.
But I want to make the motion to adopt this.
But no, so in the absence of other questions, I'll be happy to make a motion to.
Well, let me take comments,
Okay,
just in
thank
case there are any comments. I'd welcome opportunity, anybody in the audience who has public comment now, you're welcome to come forth and speak your mind. Hearing none, I'll bring it back up here. Now, Tony.
I'll be happy to compliment staff on their work and move approval of the staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All right, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Director Smith, I will start with you if you'd like to make a motion, or excuse me, if you'd like to vote on this item.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Alternate Director Enda?
Yes.
Alternate Director Yulo?
Yes.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Sinks?
Yes.
Director Rennie?
Yes.
Chair Corrigan?
Yes.
Vice Chair Abikoga?
Aye.
Director Gibbons?
Yes.
Director Bruins?
Yes?
Director Craig?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
And I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, please.
So I do want to commend staff. This is a lot of work. There's a lot of moving parts and such. And not serving on the finance committee or anything like that, and having missed the July meeting, I think you did an excellent job packaging this up. So it was quite effective. And thank you for all the hard work that staff's doing. But I do have one ask, and that is, I love your analysis slide. However, the ask that I have is when we put this out on our website, that we make sure that the one in the packet is the scenario that reflects the budget assumptions, okay? Because if you put one and it skews the whole thing. So if you can make sure we're picking the actual one as the still shot.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And in the presentation, there's supplemental slides, and there I'll show the different scenarios, and of course the budget one has that surplus with the assumptions for PG&E, PCA, as well as our discounts.
Yes, but with anybody who might be looking at these with short attention spans or what have you, they may not get to the supplemental. So again, I just think the one that's in the snapshot, and as you said, they're in the back, but I want to pull that one up, if that's okay.
Terrific. Thank you guys all so much. We're going to move on to item number 5, SVCE High-Level Roadmap. I believe this is going to be Amy.
And as Amy comes to set up the presentation, if I may just say a few words
Yes,
to
please.
set this up. When we set up the organization, we started off looking at cleaning up power supply, and then we moved to programs. You created a CPAC, Customer Program Advisory Group, and you just extended their sunset date by 3 months. Thank you very much for that. Since I came on board, looked at decarbonization plan, I mentioned that we'll bring you a high-level roadmap today and a more detailed roadmap in December. So today, what we are looking for from you as we present this high-level roadmap is, are we on the right track? Are these the kinds of things you'd want to see in December? And if there's any input you can give us for what you want to see in December, that'll be great. If what we're presenting to you is what you're expecting, that's great. We'll just continue. There's a lot of work we'll have to do between now and December to get that roadmap done. Amy, please.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Girish. And I'm very excited to present to you the draft high-level decarbonization strategy and roadmap. And as Girish mentioned, this is kind of a snapshot, a preview of the direction that we're heading. And so we'd love your feedback and input on where we are to date and where we're going. Okay. So first, we'll recap some things you've already seen before that you already know, SVCE's mission and the progress towards decarbonization to date. Then we'll go into the draft high-level roadmap and strategy and conclude with next steps. So, as you all are aware, SVCE's mission is to reduce dependence on fossil fuels by providing carbon-free, affordable, and reliable electricity, and innovative programs for the SVCE community. I think it's important to remind ourselves of that mission. This entire strategy and roadmap falls out of our mission. And SVCE also, as you already know, has made some significant progress to date in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So earlier this year, we carried out an emissions inventory, which was presented to the board in July. So it was a couple months ago. So as that inventory covers 2015 calendar year, which is before SVCE was launched, and that's our baseline year. In addition to 2017, which was the first calendar year, full calendar year that SVCE had been in existence. And so when we speak about SVCE emissions, in this slide deck, we are referring to, first of all energy-related emissions. So not just electricity, but emissions from other energy, natural gas, and transportation. And there are also emissions from all of our customers. And so that includes our direct access customers and also those customers who have opted out of SVCE. And so these really are community-wide energy-related emissions.
So it's from the pie chart, you can see the three main categories are that electricity, transportation, and natural gas, and those contributions are shown in different shades of green, blue, and yellow, respectively. So between 2015, before SVCE launched, in 2017, just by SVCE's existence, providing carbon-free electricity, we've reduced emissions by 14%. Please note that, as you know, Milpitas was enrolled within the 2017 calendar year. So in this next inventory in 2018, it will reflect a full year of enrollment of Milpitas, and therefore the emissions reductions will be closer to 20%. And I think a nice way to visualize this is through a waterfall chart. And so on the vertical axis, you have metric tons of emissions. And on the very left, you'll see our 2015 inventory. On the very right is a 2017 inventory. And in between, all of the red bars show the various contributors to emissions that have actually increased emissions, such as there have been increases in therms per household, there's been growth in employment, hotter summers, et cetera. But then you see all of the steps down, the green bars that follow that show how emissions have decreased. And the big drop is in the electricity fuel mix. And the vast majority of that big drop is from you. So in addition to powering our community with clean electricity and carrying out the emissions inventory, we have done a few other things that have already launched. For instance, a peak day pricing program for our C&I customers. We released an RFP for community engagement grants and are in the process of evaluating those proposals. And we also secured a sizable grant from the Air District to fund heat pump water heater retrofits. But of course, we have a lot of progress yet to make to support our member agencies in meeting science-based emissions reductions targets, which of course is the subject of this presentation. So in addition to the progress shown on the prior slides, just echoing what Girish had mentioned in his comments and what you already know, so we do have a number of key advisory groups. These are the kind of three key ones. And we've been carrying out an extensive stakeholder engagement process over really the last year or so, and they've been working very hard, providing recommendations and feedback to staff on programmatic development. And so the first and foremost is the Customer Program Advisory Group, which was launched at the beginning of the year, made up of representatives from each of the member jurisdictions, and they're providing feedback specifically on residential programs. Second, we also have the member agency working group comprised of staff representatives from the member agencies that have roles in sustainability, communications, and general administration that convey the priorities of member agencies to guide programmatic development. And of course, our large commercial customers, which make up, as we saw in the last presentation, the majority of our load. And they have their own focus areas and priorities. And so I've included on this slide some summarized priority areas identified by each of these groups, but this is really just one part of their contributions. As I mentioned, they've been meeting monthly for a number of months now, and their fingerprints are really all over this draft strategy and roadmap, and so I'll try to highlight throughout the presentation where their feedback has been instrumental. And in addition to those key advisory groups, the stakeholder landscape is really quite full. Here, I'm showing Silicon Valley Clean Energy customer staff committees board, our member communities, and then surrounding it, academic agencies, national environmental advocacy, our local grassroots advocacy organizations, federal, state, regional governments, regulatory entities, our CCEA peers, PG&E and the local munis. And then I also included a second one of more of the private sector partners, manufacturers, practitioners, entrepreneurs, innovators, financiers, et cetera. And we've been in ongoing conversations and are already collaborating with multiple entities listed on these two slides. We don't, for this slide in particular, the more private sector focused stakeholders, we don't have a monthly meeting with these folks like we do with the MOG and the CPAG. These stakeholders have to be engaged in different ways. And so the way in which we're doing that is through this organized, facilitated workshop that's taking place next week. And so that will give us a much broader participation of the stakeholder landscape within the roadmap development process. Okay, so that was a brief summary of progress to date and the stakeholder engagement process. So now I'd like to dive into the draft high-level roadmap, strategy and roadmap, excuse me. And the overarching decarbonization strategy is really summarized in 3 steps. Procure and maintain a carbon-free power supply, electrify everything, and promote energy efficiency and grid integration. And so this strategy really is the consensus of the scientific community, resulting from a multitude of studies looking at how to achieve deep decarbonization. So these 3 steps are not unique. However, we like to think of it in terms of the Venn diagram on the right, which I'll walk through. So first, with power supply, carbon-free electricity really is the cornerstone of a decarbonized economy, and it's our core product. So to successfully achieve deep decarbonization, we must ensure that our power supply remains sustainable, affordable, and carbon-free. And we also need to provide innovative rate products to better serve customers and support the grid, given the larger transitions that are happening within the grid, specifically integrating higher penetrations of renewables. For mobility, transportation is our biggest category of emissions, and tackling transportation really is crucial for meeting emissions reductions targets. So for SVCE, what this means is to electrify transportation, including both passenger and commercial vehicles, and then also to work on supporting the development of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Then for the built environment, this is a second largest kind of component of emissions, and decarbonizing buildings successfully involves fuel switching. So it involves switching appliances that run on natural gas to efficient electric technologies, heat pump technologies that use our carbon-free electricity. And then fourth and finally, to successfully decarbonize, you also have to continue to pursue energy efficiency and ensure all of these new electrified loads are connected and grid interactive and enhance demand-side flexibility. And that's needed to support the grid and really tackle the duck curve, in addition to minimizing potential distribution system impacts and their associated costs. Okay, so that's kind of the overarching strategy, and so I wanted to take a look again at SVCE's emissions. And so this chart shows emissions by year. The vertical axis is, again, metric tons. On the very left, so those are the results from our emissions inventories, the 2015 and 2017 years that we saw before. On the right is a draft forecast, and this is largely provided at this point for illustrative purposes. So we're in the process of carrying out the analysis, so the height of these bars are going to change. We don't know exactly what what our business as usual is until completing that analysis, which is taking place now. But if we take the current bars that exist, here I've overlaid a couple diamonds. So as you know, in our strategic plan, we do have an emissions reductions target already, and that is a 2021 target to reduce emissions 30% below 2015 levels. And so the very first orange diamond on at the 2021 year reflects that target. Sorry. So just by decarbonizing electricity, we've gotten pretty far there, around 2/3 of the way there, once you take into account, again, the full year of enrollment in Milpitas. However, it's really important to keep in mind that decarbonizing electricity is a low-hanging fruit. It's significantly harder to decarbonize buildings and transportation. And so although we've come a long way, and we should celebrate that, we do need to be prepared really to roll up our sleeves because the challenge really is yet to come. And in addition to the 2021 goal, I've also included there California's 2030 goal, which is a statewide goal to reduce emissions 40% below 1990 levels. Some of you may be familiar. This one is scaled using SVCE's 2015 emissions inventory to show kind of whereabouts that would put like our emissions. And again, it looks maybe modest, but keep in mind we still are working on the business as usual modeling and forecast, and also that it is harder to decarbonize these other sectors. And in addition to that, I've kind of illustrated here some pathways to kind of really give you a sense of what level of change are we talking about in the built environment and in transportation. And what you'll see, even for trajectory number 2, for instance, and this is a fairly rough trajectory, largely for illustration. It involves 100% residential water heating being provided by heat pumps. That's a really tall order. And there are a couple other kind of draft scenarios that are a super tall order. And so I'm just providing these to basically make sure you guys are aware of, that we have a lot of work to do. Okay. All right, so there are multiple climate targets that relate to SVCE, including the ones that I showed on the prior graph. But in addition to that, many of your cities, have your own climate action plans and your own targets. In addition to there being international targets such as the Paris Climate Agreement. And so as we carry out this business as usual missions trajectory, that will be coordinated with the member agencies, and actually next month is where we'll be engaging with them and understanding the information and assumptions that are used in their own climate action plans to synchronize that with our particular modeling efforts. And this emissions analysis will be used to inform proposals for post-2021 SVCE emissions goals, which would be discussed at the December meeting as within the context of the larger strategy and roadmap. Okay. So through CPAG, MOG, and feedback from other stakeholders, we've developed a brief strategic framework that I'll go through to guide us that addresses the following questions. Kind of what will we do, which priorities will guide us, and how will we do it? Of all of the discussions and recommendations from our advisory groups with staff, with other partners, we could broadly categorize all the types of activities we pursue into the following 4: retail products and services, education and outreach, public policy, and market transformation. And another recurring theme is like, how are we going to prioritize what we do? Because we know there are going to be too many things that we should be doing. Like, how do we sort them? And these are the 5 principles that were synthesized largely from 20 metrics from the CPAG, or what they refer to as benefits. 6 identified by SVCE staff from the prior summer effort, and then with input from the MOG and other stakeholders. And then the third part of the framework is how will we do it? So in addition to addressing what we're doing, both the types of activities and the prioritization, we identified these as the foundational principles of our approach: innovation, data, and partnerships. So we are a small organization with limited resources that serves a community that's ultimately responsible for a pretty small fraction of global emissions. We know this. In order to have an impact beyond our borders, an impact that I think meets and exceeds our community's ambitions, we have to take a fresh approach. And it's to not follow the traditional utility programs playbook. And so that's really encapsulated on this particular slide. And ultimately, that approach is about leverage and embracing innovation, data, and partnerships. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'd like to skip this slide. And so these are strategies that we've identified and categorized by the different types of activities, but the program roadmap, the draft programmatic areas really fall out of these strategies. And so I propose we go ahead and move towards that, but I'm happy to go back if anyone did want to go back and cover that, or happy to answer any questions about it as well. So if you recall at the beginning of the presentation, I showed a slide of recommendations of priorities for CPAG, MOG, and the C&I customers. And so those have really fit into the program activity areas that you see here, kind of categorized by our Venn diagram. The legend is in the upper right, which describes the color coding. So I tried to highlight by coloring the different bullet points which one was a direct outcome from CPAG or was heavily supported by CPAG as indicated in one or more different discussions. Those are in orange. The MOG recommendations or support are in turquoise, and in some cases both groups. Those are listed in blue. So the ones that are in black are driven more from other stakeholder groups or staff, or in the case of like peak day pricing and community engagement grants, those are already in progress. Please note that the color coding is a little bit rough because some of them were a bit challenging to match one for one, but it hopefully gives a very clear indication as to how much these draft program activity areas are really shaped by the key advisory groups. And I realize this slide is a bit dense, but I'd like to go over just the main components. And so in the upper left, pointing towards power supply, there were 3 programmatic areas related to power supply that emerged as important areas. Seeking community input in the development of a more comprehensive integrated resource plan, so a bit of a less of a compliance document and more of a kind of community-driven policy document. Issuing an RFP for local distributed energy resources, developing and implementing novel rate products to meet customer needs and support the grid. In the lower left, these 5 areas focus on the built environment. Our MOG is very interested in reviewing and removing barriers to electrification in existing municipal policies. They're interested in the development of 2019 all-electric REACH codes and a suite of model complementary policies, developing model specifications for all-electric homes and businesses. We already have the Air District grant, so launching the heat pump water heater retrofit program, and expanding state policy activity in support of building decarbonization. In the upper right, for energy efficiency and grid integration, the peak day pricing program that already exists kind of fits within the grid integration category, as does promoting the non-SVCE efficiency programs and other programs that are available to our customers that they are already paying for, administered by other parties. And then under mobility, carrying out a community-wide EV readiness and infrastructure plan, addressing market gaps in multifamily and mixed-use commercial EV charging, and working with our member agencies to electrify vehicle fleets. And then there are a few in the lower right that fit within multiple areas, which includes developing, a platform for continuous innovation, a customer resource center, the community engagement grants, and a flagship program. So this chart shows the same programmatic areas and how they may be pursued in the coming 18 months. And again, please note this entire presentation is draft, including this particular slide. Some of the activities can and must be staggered given limited staff resources and also given just external timelines. And for many of these initiatives, we may not be carrying out these initiatives alone. They could be coordinated with our other CCAs. We have a pretty robust working group, specifically of Bay Area CCAs, where we see a lot of potential to really join forces and have some economies of scale and pursue these programmatic activities that benefit the entire region. Okay, so regarding resources, you've already seen a lot about that already from the last presentation, so I'll just mention that we will bring in December a proposal that focuses on leveraging finite funds, and we'll also continue to pursue resources, which in this case is broadly grant funding and partnerships from some of the key groups listed here, as we have done with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Grant. And also a part of the proposal would be a frequency of the progress reports and comprehensive policy review. And so we're thinking at this point that a roughly quarterly progress report on the implementation of the decarbonization strategy and roadmap to the board could be appropriate, which could be in concert with various other review cycles, such as the budget cycle, the strategic plan update, Earth Day, et cetera. And also we would probably seek to carry out a comprehensive policy review on a roughly annual basis. And so the frequency of reporting and the frequency of the policy review would be another component to the proposal we will be bringing you in December. Okay, so next steps. We discussed briefly earlier in the context of the stakeholder landscape. So we have a facilitated workshop next week where we're incorporating this broader group of stakeholders into the development process and getting their feedback and coaching prior to bringing a detailed roadmap between then and December to the board. We may be making a stop at the executive committee for some interim feedback. But currently the timeline is to bring to you the detailed strategy and roadmap in December. And that will incorporate the following. So first, the completed emissions trajectory analysis, proposals, and also alternatives for post-2021 emissions reductions targets, the 18-month and 3-year roadmap of the program's portfolio, resources for executing on that roadmap, progress reports and policy review frequency. In addition to that, we think that a communications toolkit could be particularly helpful in helping you all and helping us communicate what the strategy means to the community, to other policymakers at the state level, et cetera. So that would be another component of it. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention, especially given the time. And I look forward to answering any questions you have and listening to the feedback you have, in addition to the comments from the community, of course, as well.
Thank you so much, Amy. And this is your first report to the board, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic, outstanding. So I'm going to bring it up here for questions, comments, all at once, to give her any feedback or thoughts and share your thinking on this topic. Rod, go first, please.
Yeah, I wonder if we could turn to slide 28 and look at the program activity areas. One of the things, having sat on the Air District Board for almost 4 years, I know well, is uptake rates with individual owners of homes, right? It can be problematic, and the overhead in administering those programs can be a challenge. So I wonder if you might comment on what could be done here, given current circumstances. We have in Silicon Valley a boom. There's a lot of Class A office space being developed right now. It seems like hitting some of the big projects we have, there's housing and big, mixed use projects going on. Hitting these things as they're being engineered and architected, if we could provide even a small incentive to take a building that is plumbed both for gas, or a big project that's plumbed both for gas and electric, and electrify it, it seems like we might really be able to do something on bending down the curve. And I wonder, I don't see that specifically as an option here, but I wondered if staff has been considering that and would like to comment.
Excuse me. So the answer is yes. We definitely have considered that and are pursuing it. And I apologize that it's not listed here. And I apologize to Dawn that it's not listed here.
Okay.
It is a key priority. It was also listed in the prior slide under kind of recommendations from C&I customers. And so, yeah, I mean, everything that you said is certainly in the front of staff's mind as far as the slow turnover rate of existing buildings and getting in the design and architecture phase. And so I think both technical assistance for all-electric building construction. In some cases, you can electrify not just at a building level, but at a district level. That's under discussion, in addition to, as you're saying, kind of more design incentives. And so both of those are on the table.
If I may just add to that, as much as we've tried to work as fast as we can, take a deliberate approach on developing a roadmap, I think if there are opportunities that present itself to us in terms of large developments, for example, the Cupertino Valco development, for example, or other developments that you may bring to our attention, we'd want to jump on that. And I think I have some authority to do some design grants under the authority you've delegated to me. We would jump on that right away, and also bring to you, if it's over my authority, bring it to you for consideration. Because the example you gave, for example, if you're plumbing for natural gas, that's going to be with us for the next 50 to 100 years.
Yeah.
And so we want to take advantage of these opportunities as early as we can in this process.
So in other words, it may not take a huge financial incentive for us to just provide a grant that would get some experts in that really know the score and know how to do green buildings efficiently. More greener buildings, electric buildings efficiently, right?
Yeah, I think we need to be very opportunistic and take advantage of this. And so providing design grants, design assistance with experts who can actually guide developers and architects to adopt electric technology into their plans, I think that's the kind of thing we need to be looking at. Obviously, very programmatically and setting aside budget as part of our plan, but in this next few months, if there are opportunities that come up, I think we have the ability to jump on it right away.
I support that. I think the idea of demonstrating to the state that in addition to all the great things we're doing on power supply and in creating new power supply, that we're actually changing ground conditions here as we experience this boom, build a lot more housing that we know we need to build and so forth. Especially in these projects that are larger where we have a real opportunity. I think if we become a go-to agency in our area for, here's if you really want to set the model for how to electrify, we know how to help you with that, and we're willing to provide a small incentive to make. I just think the benefit in selling community choice energy to, frankly, some of the skeptics in San Francisco and Sacramento would be high. So I appreciate that very much. And I'll be sitting about here in about this position next Tuesday night, and I will certainly raise it when we go through our project.
Despite the fact that I represent a city without a commercial entity in and of itself, I actually like that idea, and I'm just sort of thinking outside of the box, wondering if perhaps looking at, I love the idea of these regional partnerships with our other CCAs, but perhaps even doing a jointly funding a prize, like some of these big prizes have gone out that inspire people to create rockets, for instance, but inspiring a prize that we grant to the first architectural firm or first builder or commercial project that can show that it's 100% electrified. It could be an interesting thing to consider. I shouldn't be opining from up here, but it just occurred to me as you said it. Sorry.
Integral Design came and talked to us, right, in a workshop. They're an example of a company that really does seem to have their finger on what it takes. David Caneda was here presenting. I don't know if you remember, but I think there are experts who we could turn to, and if there was just a little bit of lubrication that we could provide, it could make a big difference.
Okay, so Rob.
So in case you aren't aware of the project, yesterday I was at the U.S. Mayor's Alliance for a Sustainable Future conference, And Mayor Scharf mentioned that in Oakland, they have electrified a whole block. They took a whole block and completely electrified it, and they've got shared charging stations and shared electric car share and so forth. It was kind of I got when I talked to her, she brought me over to her director of sustainability to give me more details, and I have his card. I don't have it with me now, but I can give it to you later. But it sounded like interesting. I think it's kind of a science project at this point, but there might be something there that we can get involved in. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
Over here, Jeannie?
Are you just taking questions or are you comments?
Either or both.
Okay,
This
I'm
is
just gonna-
not an item that we're going to take
Okay.
action on, so.
I'm going to jump into this thing. So if we're looking for a model, I'd like to offer the city of Los Altos, because last night our council just took action and approved moving forward with our new community center. It's a 24,500 square foot building, all electric. And so, and I have to say, even though we've approved this and we're now going to go into, the building, the design for the build, we are still challenged with exactly how do you do this. So we want an all-electric building. And so if there's an opportunity, if we want, we don't have to look to Oakland to try and figure out, maybe we can get our first model, and maybe we should be looking at how do we do that, because as Courtney knows, even though she says, she's basically a bedroom community, but our downtown is her downtown, our shared community, it's kind of her residents come to our community center. So we'll really be dealing with two of us. The two of us will take credit on this one, okay, Courtney?
I think we should also point out one of the slides was the Los Altos Art and Wine Festival, I'm pretty sure.
No, seriously, we are. I mean, it'd be one of those things where I mentioned it to Jarish when I had my one-on-one with him today, but want to try and connect and see what we can do. I mean, we're using a wonderful architecture firm who's going off with all these different resources and kind of coming back, and it's definitely a learn-as-you-go sort of process. So there might be something here with something in our own backyard.
Cool. Liz?
Okay, as the architect amongst us.
Okay.
So just for fun, every 2 years, the AAA Silicon Valley has their design awards. Mm-hmm. And we're doing it this year in October. In 2020, you could do an award. It can be for a project in process. So, I mean, it would really give you the recognition and the energy behind getting other people to join.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Join on the bandwagon. And you could really celebrate it amongst all the peers as well as our clients. So I think that would be a wonderful venue for you. And along that line, my comments were on the list of partners. I did not see the AIA, the CSI, Construction Specification Institute, USGBC, Uniform Building Code organizations, the State Energy Commission. These are the core people that you've got to connect with, because we're always lectured as architects that our buildings take up 40% or more of the energy, and create greenhouse gases consequently. And I keep saying that's changing, but that is the agency you need to get to. There's a lot of, as we now know, state legislation that is directly impacting a lot of things that are on these slides that we will not be able to do because of the legislation that is either in place or is potentially coming in place in terms of buildings and so forth. The League of California Cities is another excellent organization that you want to start connecting in with. Don't forget there's the Zero Net Energy 2030 program, and then there is all architects we're going crazy taking classes on how to make our buildings zero net energy. And that's not consistent with zero carbon. Right. And then they have these new state laws that says every new building must be built with solar to reduce carbon. Well, our buildings already don't use carbon for their power. So these are all areas legislatively for Hillary and otherwise that we really need to get more engaged with. which I'm delighted about. I'm just absolutely thrilled about. So thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
I just wanted to thank staff for the hard work they did on this this roadmap. I think it's terrific. The only thing I just would want to comment on is that I think we talk a lot about what the residents and what the business community should be doing. I really think we need to start looking inwards. I like the comments that were made by the others about the cities doing more work on their buildings. I think buildings are a huge opportunity for us as cities to set the example for what we want the business communities and the residents to look for. If we can build our infrastructure or modernize our infrastructure to be better, I think that sets the example for what the rest of the community should look like. I like what you have here for the fleet. I think that's the first step for a lot of cities, but I really think we're missing a huge opportunity, and we can really take advantage of setting the example of what we want our communities to look like. So great job with the roadmap so far, but I think we have a lot more work we can do about just getting ourselves as cities and organizations to step up to the plate and do what kind of model the example we want our cities and want our businesses to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nobody else on the board who wants to make a comment, I do have one member of the public who'd like to speak. Tony, go ahead. Oh, and Nancy. Nancy, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I do, actually. I wanted to ask staff, I think slide 10 and 11 are really impressive, and to the other board members' comments are incomplete. So there are a lot of partners here. So I wanted to know if, I guess, what is a partner? What do you envision in this? What would be a good partner for Silicon Valley Clean Energy? And this looks like it's quite complex. It's a changing landscape. There's a lot of players on it. So what is the thinking about as we go forward with the roadmap of defining and, I guess, what are the criteria for a partnership?
Okay, if I could repeat what I think I heard. So I believe Director Smith said that there are a number of partners here, variety of different types of partners in addition to just the magnitude. And one question is, like, what does it mean to have a partnership with one of these entities? And, could it change depending on the type of entity? I believe that's what I heard, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I think it's a great question. Oops, did this go off? Is this on? Okay, sorry. So I think it really is dependent upon the type of agency. So let me give a few examples. So for the upper left-hand portion of this slide, research universities and national labs. And so, we happen to have a pretty good one in our backyard, and also Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, and the national lab as well. And both of those national labs, in addition to the universities, have very core expertise when it comes to energy. And so one way in which we've already started engaging them is through student projects. And so we've met with a number of academics at each of the universities and the national labs, and are in the process of providing them with a variety of different projects that their master's students would be interested in pursuing, because they're actually real-world problems. Absent that, these professors will often, kind of make up their own own projects that are interesting but aren't necessarily tied to a specific organizational need. And so there's just really this awesome potential for a mutually beneficial partnership through ongoing education, in addition to longer-term research partnerships. And so we want to have an impact, or if SVCE wants to have an impact beyond our borders, I think one way to do that is to really help the academic community, help the research community push the boundaries of knowledge. And so through academic partnerships, either through CEC grants, or in some cases maybe Department of Energy grants or others, and maybe our role is just access to customer data, so they would analyze it and carry out whatever analyses that they they have, under all of the conditions of making sure all the data remains private and confidential, et cetera, et cetera. Like that could be one example of how we could support the academic community with also a pretty low staff burden on our part.
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm really struggling.
I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay.
And speak right into it and don't move your head.
Okay, will do. So where do you want me to start? Maybe I'll just recap very briefly. So one way, so the types of partnerships, they're going to be different depending on the types of agencies. So I'll give another example and make it very brief. So in the lower right-hand corner are CCEA peers. So especially with Peninsula Clean Energy that serves San Mateo County, given our proximity and how much mixing there is between the two counties, we are already meeting on a monthly basis and coordinating our programmatic development activities, and we'll be very likely piggybacking on each other's programs and successes and lessons learned. And so in that case, it could be, we could formalize an MOU. It's not just with Peninsula Clean Energy, though. There are all of the different Bay Area CCAs have a monthly kind of working group where we're working together. And so there could be MOUs, there could be joint project agreements. It really depends on the opportunity and I think the type of agency, to answer Director Smith's question.
Perfect. Thank you. If there's no other comments, I'm going to invite James Talea to the microphone. Hello.
Hi, good evening. James Talea, resident of Sunnyvale. I'm also the chair of Carbon Free Silicon Valley, the one partner that doesn't have a logo, but we don't spend our time on logos.
It is there. Oh, no logo, I see.
Just words in action. So I wanted to thank Amy and all staff and for all of you to be driving toward doing programs that can help on the next step needed is to use the clean energy to decarbonize. And I appreciate the extensive outreach that Amy and staff have been doing. It is one of the things she brought up in the report was how difficult and challenging it's going to be. It really is going to be that way, and we all just have to keep plugging away at it and doing everything we can as quickly and aggressively as we can. Similar to along the lines of some of the statements made before, we don't want to miss some opportunities that are coming up. I live in Sunnyvale, as I mentioned, the largest by load of the member agencies, and I'd like to ask staff and board assistance with our green building code update. I haven't had a chance to talk to Director Smith about this directly yet. I will, but as it's going to be hard, and we need to take advantage of every opportunity we can. But there's one of the momentum of regular, normal staff in cities and towns is going to be hard to change. And it's important that this agency start to really push into the operations and the planning and the policies of our member agencies. The Green Building Code update draft in Sunnyvale, which won't be up again for another 3 years, is business as usual. They don't even have anything in there about electrification. And they're pulling old items out. Now, the timing is a challenge because they're trying to do it before this entity is planning its programs. But there are things that staff and all of you may be able to do to help Director Smith and me try to get a good working draft moving forward in the right way in Sunnyvale for the Green Building Code update. Otherwise, we miss that opportunity. Thank you very much.
That's perfect, right? 2 minutes, like on the nose, as if you practiced. I love it. Tony, please.
It's actually wanting to speak, yes. James, thank you for that. And I almost wanted to stand there and talk, as opposed to standing from a director's perspective, but more of another agency staff person's perspective. But I just wanted to note for us all, as James pointed out, this is where it gets hard. You know, we saw that big reduction, and that was easy. But that was for lack of a better term, the one big bullet we had in our gun. And from here on out, it really gets hard. So when we're looking at retrofit at resale ordinances, and you're going to have to look at some of your realtor friends and tell them this is what we need to do, I mean, that's hard. When we're having to look at developers and saying, yes, I know it's going to cost more to build the building this way, but this is what we need to do, that's hard, especially for you all who are elected officials. And hopefully some of you are term limited out, so you don't care as much. But
Oh, I'm glad you added that final caveat.
sorry, but
Thank you for
no.
that.
But my point is there are very real political realities associated with the work we still have to do. And,
Absolutely.
James, I want you to know that, and Steve can tell you this as well, that the Sunnyvale staff has very much indicated an interest in moving forward on ordinances. And perhaps you haven't seen it because it's not ready for public disclosure yet, but I know there is interest at a staff level. And we are working with the working group at having experts come in to tell us about what this iteration of building codes, what opportunities there are for us to go further. So you'll be hearing soon, or months from now, but not too many months, with some positive input, I think. And I'm sorry, Amy, for doing some of your job, but I can't help myself.
Amy, do you need anything else from this board tonight?
Director Smith has a question that came in by email.
Terrific.
And so she said, I was really interested in partnerships with the commercial entity partners, the Teslas, and the Nests. You state this like these relationships are in play, and I wanted to know more about what that means to staff. Sure. So if I could I'll comment briefly on that. Yes, and so the relationships in play at this point, the engagement of this part of the stakeholder landscape, the more private sector focused part of the stakeholder landscape, some of it's just surveying, where is the state of the technology? Like, where is the state of kind of innovation at this point in time, because it changes extremely rapidly. Just look at the changes within the energy sector, the cost of solar over the past 5 years. And so some of it's like simply meeting with them and understanding like what the costs are, what products they're offering, what services they're offering, et cetera. I would say that we're also in kind of more engaged conversations about really trying to figure out how we can, again, leverage. And so we happen to be at what many would describe as the epicenter of innovation. And there's a lot of money that's going towards picking the winners and losers of different products and services that we end up seeing eventually on the shelves. And we want to make sure that our community has a voice in those decisions that are being made and understands kind of the need space that we see for decarbonization. And we don't know what that looks like right now, but some of the other accelerators and incubators you see on this graph, for instance, we've been trying to scope that out. So I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Any other comments? I'm going to move on. Amy, thank you so much. It's really very well done, and we're so glad you're on board.
Thank you.
Welcome. I'd also like to commend my fellow board members up here for your thoughtful comments. I really appreciated being part of this discussion. It's great. Item number 6, the executive committee report. I'm going to make that report. We have not met since June. Our next meeting is September the 25th. I have nothing other than that to report.
25th.
September the 25th. Sorry if I'm going too fast. The next report, item number 7, is the Finance and Administration Committee report. Burton.
Okay, so we did meet twice. On July 23rd, the committee held a special meeting to discuss the benefits compensation that we talked about tonight. And on September the 4th, we met and recommended the contracts on the consent calendar, as well as providing feedback to the budget that we heard about tonight. And we also discussed amendments to the SVCE benefits package and organizational chart that were also presented on items 3 and 4 tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next item, number 8, the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee. Rod, do you have any report?
I do. So I'm not going to be redundant to what Hillary already discussed, but I will say we have a small and mighty ad hoc committee. We last met on July 18th. We discussed all of these ongoing regulatory and legislative issues. We developed messaging around SB 237 and made plans to outreach to legislatures. So I think between late spring and this summer, we managed to get around to, either at the Capitol or here locally, the offices of Assembly Members Stone. And some of this was also, by the way, with our sister agency in Monterey Bay. Assembly Members Stone, Caballero, Berman, Calra, Lowe, and Chu, and Senators Hill, Wykowski, and Monning to urge opposition to SB 237. We did more than that. We also had a general conversation about reminding them about our value proposition and what we are doing to actually bring new resources online. The work we've done with the wind and the pending work we have with the solar and the promise of programs. So updates obviously have been sent to the full board, and we've asked for your advocacy, and I'll just add my thanks to those of you who have responded and to those of you who took the time to go to either Sacramento or show up at a district office for these folks. I will say of this list, to my knowledge, on 237, I had a conversation with Senator Wykowski. He was the one, I believe, who did support 237 in the end, and he said, frankly, he had a bill that was dear to him, and he had made a deal early on with the author, Hertzberg. But I was really pleased. I think every one of the other ones, Hillary's it true, supported us in saying no to 237.
That's correct.
Bell also said no, right? So that's the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any board member announcements or direction for future agenda items? Yes, Howard.
It was really a question for Rod. You moved so fast. Are we all supposed to be writing letters to the governor about 237, or do we just consider it's water under the bridge?
No.
No.
Right.
So, at this point,
Please clarify the words. Yes, write letters.
Yes.
Hold on, let's let,
we would like letters now from cities, if possible, requesting veto. We have enough coming from you as from the SVCE perspective. If you can request through your cities, and actually Hillary has either sent or will be sending tomorrow morning an email to your staff and copying you. We would like it on city letterhead if you can get that requesting veto.
Do you have an actual draft of a letter?
Yes, that
A
will be
model
attached
letter?
to the email.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that the challenge is, if there's a veto to be had, he has to proactively sign the veto, and it has to be done before the end of September. So
Correct.
many of us are running out of time if we need to bring this through our councils, frankly.
Yes, so this is a little bit of, it's whatever you could do.
Yeah.
And this is statewide. So,
any other board member announcements or direction for future agenda items? No? Okay, then any public comment here tonight on the items to be discussed in our closed session? Hearing none and seeing none, I'm going to convene this meeting to closed session. We will report back out at the end of the closed session for those of you who are interested. Otherwise, see the public later.